Yes, you're listening to Business Podcasting Made Easy, the Influencer's Formula, where you're going to get a roadmap to instant authority and thought leadership with the podcast that you're proud of. We are going live on the IBGR network globally around the world. This is episode 43. We're still here with our special guest, Chris O'Byrne, who is the best-selling author and owner of Jet Launch Publishing. That's Jet Launch Publishing, and has been the publisher of over 12,000 books. We're going to dive into, explore misconception number 2 around publishing, and that is you can do good enough, that's air quote, good enough editing and book design on your own. There's no reason to pay for it. I'm Donna Cundy, the co-founder of the IBGR Network, global radio authority and podcast expert, with the producer of over 14,000 podcasts.
And I'm Ben Joya, 3-time international best-selling author, and Chris O'Byrne and Jet Launch published my 3rd book, and they will publish probably every book for the rest of my life. Thank you, Chris and team. And it really comes down to this fantastic quote from Jim Harrison, right? And he says, because most writers have totally unrealistic concepts of how publishing works. So, ladies and gentlemen, and everything in between, this is your opportunity to get realistic concepts, right? So, Chris, you and I have talked about this multiple times, right? Like, why the hell would you do your own publishing? Similar to, like, why the hell would you try to fix your own electric or fix your own toilet, right? It's much better to get professional help, I think. What do you think about that, Chris? Chris, unmute yourself, please.
One thing to keep in mind is that the time factor, the cost of your time. You could learn to do all these things. You could learn to be a great editor. You could learn to be a good book designer. How many hundreds of hours is that going to take you? Opportunity cost, that's what they call it. So what are you going to do instead with those hundreds of hours that you saved? Write more, get out there and market and sell your book, get a second job. There's so many things that you could be doing with that time. I think that's a huge factor.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I mean, Chris, when we first started our grand adventure together, it's easy for me to say, right? Not only helping me publish my book, right? But you, Chris, do the publishing often for the folks that I coach, right? Because I do the book coaching and then we go to you for the publishing. And you told me one time, said, you know, Ben, right? There are more than 400 steps to publishing a book, right? And I went, holy crap, I had never thought about that before. And then, took a step back and I went, oh, well, that makes a lot of sense, right? Because if you think all the components, why the hell would you do that, right? Why? I'll stop.
Yeah, because people say they're going to do it because they're going to save money, but you're not. In the long run, you are definitely not saving money. That's the deal.
Yeah. And who, I think that's also going back to our last episode, the thing about the traditional versus self-publishing. There's those people who do the self-publishing and take it literally, that they just do it all on their own. And so, you end up with, I can't tell you how many books. I love to support authors. So I'll buy a book when I see one and I'm reading through it and I'm like, good golly, does this not show up with little squiggles when you did this on your Google Drive, Doc? Can you please just, do the little editing?
Spell check anyone?
Right?
Yeah. It's really something.
Some people take write as you speak to the next level. Sorry,
right.
Just had to throw that in there.
To the wrong level.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's really something, and it's so interesting too how disempowering beliefs, right? Myths, misperceptions, and even again the baggage around the term self-publishing, right? Like, let's think of this. Hey, everybody who's listening right now, think non-traditional publishing, right? Think freedom and choice and ownership and flexibility and no restriction, right? I mean, do you want to write a proposal and wait right? Like, don't you have a message that needs to get out like yesterday? Because there are a bunch of people who not only need what you offer them, but, are dying to hand you money for help, right? Like, why would you write a proposal and then have have a publisher come back and say, this stuff is good, but this stuff is not so good, right? And sometimes you have to get an agent depending, right, on the company and the situation. So, if you if I sound a little irate and agitated at the moment, I am irate and agitated, for you listeners. Like, don't do this. So many people make this mistake. So many people keep hearing about this, and then, the piles of books, right, in the garage, and that's not really doing anybody good. And your ego, right, like the ego that keeps all of us running in circles, right, the ego isn't even going to be satisfied with those pile of books.
Yeah, I want to jump in here just a minute too, because we've talked about Chris O'Byrne at Jet Launch publishing over 12,000 books, and we've talked about your 3 books, Ben. But I also want to throw in there that you're a book coach that helps. I mean, that's what you do. You help authors write content and so that they can get their voice out there. And so I think, when you're speaking about these misconceptions and these mistakes, you're probably hearing them as well as the book coach, which is why it makes so much sense to point to a publisher like Jet Launch to get it done. Because I know as a business coach, I hear the same thing over and over again about how businesses, it should be done this way. Well, if it should be done that way, why aren't you getting the results you want? Just saying.
Just saying, right? And I think that's a beautiful reminder, right? That if you want some help with your book, right, reach out to us today at ibgr.info. If you want some help with your podcast, reach out to us at ibgr.info. If you want to do the podcast on your own, do your podcast on your own, that's something you actually can do on your own.
Sure.
Right? At least at the beginning, right? So go to influencersformula.com, follow the roadmap, follow the method, and sooner or later, your time will be better spent, speaking, interacting with potential clients, potential leads, and leaving the other work for better hands, right? That, we are much more successful in our businesses when we partner and collaborate. And this is what we are continually inviting you to do through this process, whether it's your podcast or book or both.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, Ben. Thank you for saying that about doing your podcast on your own, because we've laid out the steps very easily. And I think a way to say what we're talking about now in partnering with a company like Jet Launch to publish your book is you're positioning yourself as a thought leader, as an authority, as a likable expert in your zone of genius. And it would be akin to showing up for a speaking engagement with unkempt hair, in jeans and a sweatshirt with a hole in it. You don't want to show up like that with your book.
No pants, right? I mean,
I wasn't gonna go there,
but we must, because this is how this is.
Yep, only the emperor can get away with that. And not very well.
That's true. I didn't say no undergarments, I just said no pants,
Chris, what are your thoughts?
I'm glad I'm wearing pants today, that's for sure. One thing I want to add to what you said earlier, Ben, is we do have to wait so long to get your book published. Half the information that you're teaching people is out of date. I mean, because not only is there that long period of getting your book, just to get them to look at it and do your proposal and all that, but once you actually sign the contract and get started, it can be 2 years before your book is even done. And in that amount of time, your book's going to be halfway irrelevant by then. And think of and especially if you're using your book to help your business, think of how much you can accomplish, how much income you can, receive in those 2 to 3 years by just jumping in, finding a good partner or set of partners and getting things done. take action, hustle, get to, get busy.
Yeah. Chris, I love that you say that. And it's interesting because this is stuff that I teach my clients, right? That it's so much easier to have a conversation with a potential client, a potential strategic partner, when you have the book as a centerpiece to talk about. The book doesn't even have to be done yet, right? But you can say, hey, I'm writing a book about such and such a topic. How about we chat about a potential collaboration? Let's see what we can do together. People are so much more willing to get on the phone with you because you have a book or because you have a forthcoming book, right? And, I mean, how many people have reached out to you and been like, hey, you want to get on a discovery call? And you're like, no, I don't want to get on a discovery call because you've given me no reason to get on a discovery call. But if you're like, hey, I'm about to publish this book. It looks like you're doing this. I'm doing this. We have some potential collaboration. Would you want to chat about that? The smart people, which are a good amount of them, thankfully, will say yes. So do not miss this opportunity, right? Leverage your book and don't let traditional publishing get in the way of your success and the impact that you can make in the world.
Yeah, well said. As we begin to wrap up this episode, really, when we're talking about self-publishing, it's not do it yourself. Self-publishing with companies like Jet Launch, and we're using Jet Launch as an example because we have Chris with us, who is the CEO, the founder, the guy there. But it's still full service publishing. And so let's bust that myth here for a minute. It doesn't mean you do all your work yourself. It means you still got to do some work, but it is still a full service publishing under one roof. It's comprehensive. They have concierge. And so finding the right publisher for you, you want to look for those things, somebody that offers these things, because there are 400 steps. Imagine trying to figure out 400 steps all on your own, or imagine partnering with somebody who's got your back and knows what they're doing in order to get your message out there. Any final thoughts before we take it home?
Just
I'd be pretty well wrapped up, dude. Yeah.
Sorry, Chris, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I think we did a pretty good job of covering some major points that trip people up.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
All right, so then we're going to end it. This is the wrapping up and busting misconception number 2. You can do good enough editing and book design on your own, so there's no reason to pay for it. We have, again, special guest Chris O'Byrne with us for the Influencers Formula. I'm Donna Cundy.
I'm Ben Joya.
And I'm Chris O'Byrne.
We're going to come right back after one short break with one more misconception busted. Stay with us.
Right.